In today's video, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm recommending that you try out the move of G4 with the Grob Opening. Now, let's just accept the fact that Stockfish hates this move. This is the worst possible move, according to Stockfish, but it only gives Black about a -1 edge, which isn't losing. Black has an edge here, but they're not winning. They're not winning in the slightest, and there's hardly anyone out there that knows what to do against the Grob. I mean, the only time I can remember playing against the Grob was when I played up against FM Mark the Duck. Shout out to Mark, rest in peace, Mark. But Mark was a very avid Grob player, and when I played against his Grob, it was hard to go against. He had it dialed down, but you know, I know I'm doing a hard sell here. I'm asking you to consider playing a move that is the worst possible move. But what I would say is that this move, number one, is not as bad as people think if you know what to do. Okay, that's a very important if there. And number two, you can get the same types of positions again and again and again, which, similar to the Hippo, can give you that advantage in prep and comfortability. I reached the National Master title by playing nothing but the Hippopotamus Defense, and oftentimes when I reach the middle game position, it's about +1 or -1 for my opponent, depending on what color I'm playing. But I won a lot of games with the Hippo, and I reached the National Master title because I knew those positions so well. So I would encourage you, play what you like. You might watch through this video, this theoretical, kind of analysis of the Grob and just absolutely hate it. Or you might like it, but I do encourage you to watch until the end of this and decide for yourself, engine aside, -1 aside, do you like it? If you like it, there's a good chance that you will do well with this opening. And in a lot of ways, this is a system. There is a gambit that we're going to be covering that comes out of this, which is a ton of fun, and you can get it all the time, by the way. But this kind of move, G4, gives you that immediate space on the king side, but I mean, let's face the fact that it does weaken the dark squares of F4 and especially H4, right? I mean, we see something like pawn to E5. If we touch our F pawn and move it, I mean, we're losing the game on the spot. So we do got to be careful about that. We got to keep our F pawn right where it is for the foreseeable future. But okay, this move of G4, we're going to be kind of just giving you an introduction on this so that you guys can get started on it and be able to utilize some of these techniques in your games. I wanted to start out by really the way that FM Mark the Duck played this type of system out. And I saw a game in which case he saw the move of D6, and against this, he played the move of bishop to G2. Now against D5, he personally played H3, which I personally like the move of bishop G2, allowing my opponent to take the pawn. Now, of course, here with bishop G2, which is what he goes with, Black can't even take that without just realizing that B7 is going to drop and the rook is trapped, which is obviously not great for Black at all. So in the game here, Black ends up going with the move of E5. We have D3, knight C6, and H3. And this type of setup, guys, getting that quick space on the king side, fianchettoing your bishop and putting a pawn on D3, you can get this against nearly all setups that Black can try against you. Now, there are certain options Black has, like early F5 or H5 options. We will be covering that, but this is something that you can get all the time. Now, this game here, played by Mark, continued against bishop E7 with knight F3 and knight C3, and here the move of E4. Mark got this type of setup all the time. For those of you that play the Hippo, you're probably well accustomed to this type of pawn structure, really going after that F5 square, that F5 spot, and we're even able to really get that knight over in just a few moves at some point and really stake out that square of F5, as well as this knight on F3. This is also an option as time goes on, depending on how Black plays this. But in the game here, we have the move of knight F6, and now the move of D4. Breaking with D4 at some point in the Grob can be really advantageous because you're making that space in the center. At this point, you're threatening to fork the knight on C6 and the bishop on E6 as well. And if Black decides to take, you capture back. You capture back. I mean, you're ready to take back with the queen. Now, in the game, Queen D7 was played, and Mark went with the move of knight takes E6, which is not the engine move. White's still better here, but the engine really does like the idea of bishop to E3. Okay, bishop to e3, and just continued development from this point. We have great space on the king side right now. f4 is a move that we could throw in at any point. And if black ever wants to take, okay, we capture back with the queen. We get our undeveloped piece developed. If you want to play c5, go ahead. We calmly just bring our queen back one square, and we have an incredible grip on that d5 spot. Not to mention the fact that d6 is now a backwards pawn. And depending on your style of play, you could castle kingside in these types of positions. You could castle queenside. But, I mean, you really do have a fun attacking game with those 3 pawns on e4, f4, and g4 there. Okay, now, with g4, right, again, you can get that type of setup all the time. Putting a pawn on h3, bishop g2, d3, knight c3, and then playing e4, throwing knight f3 in there as well, if you like that type of option. But what if black plays h5? I mean, we should cover this, right? I mean, what if black just plays h5 going for the pawn? Well, you have a couple of different options. Okay, you have some flexibility here in terms of how you personally want to approach this. Now, one way of going about this is taking the pawn. And if black sees this, black should just continue development in the center for now. Play something like d5, guys. This pawn on h5 is not going to be able to last forever. It's just not. Even if we move our e-pawn and try to give it some support, it's doubled, it's isolated, and black can very easily put more pressure up against it. But if black plays the move of rook takes h5, we have a position in which case we have equality. Pawn to e4, we're now threatening to take the rook right off the board, and if black runs back, we have something like knight c3. We could take control of the center. Here I'm actually having black play very well with c6 and d5, kind of a CARO-KANN defense type idea. And if bishop g4, okay, we don't like the knight being pinned, so we can play bishop to e2. And black has the advantage of having this very active rook on the h-file. We have a pawn on the h-file, so they're going to have more access to that file than we ever will. At the same time, we have more access to the g-file than black ever will, since they have a pawn down that line of fire. So rook g1 is very playable here, and it's a really good option. And by the way, if black wants to take on f3, we can capture back. You could take on h2 all you want. We have great compensation here, great development. Bishop f4. I mean, how many times is that rook going to go back to h8? And, I mean, queen e2, and we could look towards castling queenside. And, I mean, we're one move away from having every single one of our pieces developed. Right now, black doesn't have any developed. Now, with the move of h5, taking is not what Stockfish likes. Stockfish likes the move of pushing this guy up to g5 and, you know, just taking up that space. And I'd say the advantage of this is that we have automatic space on the king side. The downside is that we've really weakened the square of f5 and even the square of g4 as well, because obviously our pawn is past that point. But I mean, look, if you see something like e5 attacking your pawn, there's different ways of playing this. I personally like d4, striking in the center, defending that pawn. If black wants to take, we take back. We play queen a4. We're kind of playing a Scandinavian defense type game, but for white with this pawn on g5. And I mean, look, if d5, we have bishop g2, and I actually really like our chances. And guys, this is what I'm talking about. This position right here, it's minus 0.6 for black. Okay? I know black is slightly better, but if you know how to play this position properly, you're going to be very comfortable. Black's not going to know what the heck they're doing. I mean, this pawn on g5 does weaken f5, that's true, but it does give us nice space, and it does neutralize this knight from developing naturally. And for those of you going up against players at the beginner or intermediate levels, this can really stump players quite a bit. We also have a bishop that is the most active on the entire board. Okay, our bishop on g2 is much better than either of black's bishops. We have ideas here like c4, striking towards d5. Notice how our bishop and our queen are both looking towards c6. Knight c3 is an option. We just have really flexible play from this point, and I actually really like white's game at this point in time. So again, with the move of h5, you can take it and then, you know, hope they take immediately, although they shouldn't. Or you could play the move of g5, continue with fianchetto ideas, and of course against e5 immediately, you have d4 striking in the center and defending that g5 pawn. Okay, so that is something to consider. Now with d5, if black advances in the center here, look, I mean, there's different options that you have available, including bishop g2. I personally love this move. We're going to be covering that. But you could play h3. And this is what FM Mark the Duck went with, just defending that pawn and then getting into the setup that we've already discussed. Bishop g2, d3, and then here playing a move like knight c3. Okay, if knight f6, you could expand in the center with e4. That is an option. If black wants to push, okay, fine. We drop our knight back to e2. f4 is something we're looking at. Bringing this knight to f5 is something that we're looking at. And c3 is something that we're looking at. g5 is also another option. So again, a lot of flexibility here, a lot of different things that black has to be concerned about. If we see at this point in the game h5 striking, okay, now here we could take. Now again, should black take right away? No, because we have e4. You don't want to lose your rook as we're simply threatening to take it. And if you run back to h8, okay, we take on d5, we're up a pawn, we're up material. We could also push, and if something like knight e7, play e4. Striking in the center, taking away f5, which is very important. Now, I will say that by playing this pawn up to g5 and the pawn up to e4, f4 and h4 are weakened, which that knight could start to look towards. But let's just say we see black push and then play knight g6. Okay, h4. Now our rook defends that spot. I don't see how black's going to put more pressure up against that pawn. And if we see something like bishop to g4 there, which of these bishops is better? Black's bishop or ours? Well, obviously black's. I mean, that bishop is very active, pinning our knight, making it so it can't even move. Our bishop's just looking at a pawn that will never be able to move at all. So why not offer a trade? And if black takes, great. We take back with development, and we're in a good spot. And finally, if you see an early move like f5, black just gave up their advantage, guys. I know this looks aggressive. I know it looks sound. At least to me it did when I first saw this, but it's just a bad move. It gives away black's edge. We take, we play e4, and I mean, here the engine really likes taking back with the bishop again, offering a bishop trade, and then continuing here with bishop g5, pinning that knight. We can take that knight, that's fine. We can throw in a check. We can play queen g4. Guys, we have a fun, active game of chess, a centralized knight, a queen on g4, and I mean, castling queenside ideas, h4, h5 ideas as well. We're in a good spot with good development ahead of us. So going back to the move of g4, right? That's the kind of setup that we can get, including against e5, right? You see this? Again, you can play bishop g2. You could play h3 first or bishop g2, either one. And if knight c6, you can go for d3. You can go for h3 here, and you can get knight c3. You could strike with e4. This is something that you can get again and again and again with the Grob opening. And if you see the move of d4, I mean, the engine likes knight d5, and here, I mean, that is a very valid option. We're looking towards that bishop on e7. Our knight is obviously very active. c4 ideas could give that knight some extra support, as well as our queen some more mobility as well. But if black takes and they play knight b4, the engine likes queen e2. Just going, yeah, okay, you want to take, fine. I'm looking at e5. And if f6, we're better, actually, if we just play c3 and we just go down a pawn, because again, our bishop here is so strong. Black here doesn't have a light squared bishop. We do. And that means that this diagonal is completely ours, and this diagonal is going to be completely ours if we can get there. So, for example, here, let's play queen b2. Let's put pressure on that pawn. And black is up material here, but development for them is very tricky. I mean, if you play knight h6, you do have to be willing as black to think about the fact that your kingside pawn structure is just going to get obliterated. And if you, I mean, play something like b6 here, for example, saving the pawn, I mean, one little slip here, and oh my gosh, white's winning. Queen b5, the knight is simply going to fall. So those kinds of diagonals can really reap benefits in this type of game. And with d4, hey, if you want to go for the more traditional knight ce2 idea, looking towards c3, looking towards f4, looking towards knight g3, knight f5, nothing wrong with that. And by the way, if black wants to play bishop h4, okay, we're fine with that. The bishop is on an outpost. It is on a hole. It is on a square where we can't kick it out with a pawn, but you're using a very valuable bishop just to look at a pawn on f2 that is very well defended and a pawn that you can't put more pressure up against if you're black. On top of that, how does black develop the knight here? If you go to e7, the bishop drops. If you go to f6, the bishop drops. If you go to h6, again, you got to think about bishop takes h6 stuff. We as white have c3 ideas as well, and the queen can't even develop to sound more like d7 naturally without the bishop just falling off the board. So bishop h4, it looks fun. I'm not going to say it's a great move, though. And by the way, if something like h5 here, right, what can we do in that instance? Well, we're simply winning with g5. The bishop is cut off, and we're in a good spot. And really, by playing the move knight f3, g5 is something that we're threatening, cutting off the queen's protection from that bishop. So, guys, as you can see, the Grob opening, I really do think it's better than most people give it credit for. And there is another really fun option that can arise, which is the Grob Gambit, which arises against the move of g4 with the move of d5, in which case we're not playing h3, but we're instead going with the move of bishop to g2, inviting black to go, you know what, fine, I'll take that pawn. And if black doesn't want to take this pawn, fine. I mean, we could play h3, and then we're back into our usual type of plan of d3, knight c3, and pawn to e4, really looking to take space on the center and on the king side areas of the board. But what if black does take? This is the most common move in online chess. I personally haven't been seeing it hardly at all. When I'm going up against, 24, 25, 2600 level players, I'm seeing more, defensive, natural developmental moves. For example, this move of c6 quite a bit. My opponents don't seem very fond of taking on g4. And I play a lot of bullet chess, so that might be part of the reason why. Whether you're playing bullet, blitz, rapid, I do think that this position of c4 can be a ton of fun. And again, with the move of d5, which is the most common move, it makes sense. You're trying to limit the activity of the fianchetto bishop. You're looking to threaten the pawn on g4. If we play bishop g2, black could take, or black can just ignore it. And at the same time, guys, we don't have to play bishop g2. We could play h3 and then go there. That's fine too. It's really up to you. But I do think that this move of bishop g2 with the Grob Gambit is quite a bit of fun if black does take. We have this move of c4. And I want us to cover the top options from black. What are the most common moves that we can see here? We're going to be covering the top 5 moves that we see from the black side in online chess, starting out with the move of c6. This is the most popular move. What do we do against this? Queen b3. Notice, we have incredible pressure against that pawn on d5. 3 attackers. Black only has 2 defenders, and we're also attacking the pawn on b7. Now, what should black do here? Black should play the move of e6. How often do we see that? Hardly at all. Very rare to see that move because, b7 falls off the board. But the engine here has black playing e6 and then allowing us to take the pawn. Now, if we do take the pawn here, rook c8, rook takes c4. That's not great. So knight c3 is the better option. If knight e7, we can take on d5, advance in the center with d4. And if rook b8, the engine doesn't call this a losing move per se, but it does like queen a6 better. Okay, queen a6 looking to get back into the action fast. And again, guys, this is a position where black does have the edge, but they're not winning. And if you know this type of position well, and if you're comfortable with it, you could get some good results. But again, that's with the move of e6, which is very rare. What does black usually do? The most common move is queen b6. If you see that, we take. We capture off the pawn. We're at even material, and we have a nice game now. Black will often take on d5. We capture back. If knight c6, we can develop. If you play e6, hey, let's offer a trade. You want to take? Okay, we'll capture back. And I personally really like white's game here. We have moves here like d3. If you want to pin our knight, who cares? Rook g1. This is where our advantage lies much of the time. Especially when you're looking at Grob Gambit lines where black takes on g4. Hey, you automatically have a semi-open file. I don't know if it's semi-open or semi-open. let me know. But I guess I hear people say both. But you have that activity that your opponent just will never have because of the fact that they still have their pawn. So, and we got our pawn back. So this is some activity we have that black will just never get. We're sitting at even material. And okay, we have an isolated pawn, but black has doubled isolated pawns. So I think we're pretty comfortable there. With c4, right? Again, if you see c6, queen b3. If you see e6, what do you do here? Now, I recently saw this in an online game. I played the Grob Gambit here, and I ended up winning with the move of queen to b3 against a strong player. It turns out, though, against e6, we don't want to play queen b3. We want to play queen a4 with check. Okay, I'm still learning the Grob, and I'm just trying to share with you guys where in the journey I'm at right now in terms of learning this system. But with queen a4, right, what should black do? Let's answer that. b5. How often do we see b5? Hardly at all. Would I think about this if I was black? No. Why would we play b5? Well, it turns out that after taking, black has c6, and then with queen a4, black has time to defend this bishop. Now, most players here are not even going to be worried about that. They're just going to block the check. But notice if you block the check here, we can now take, and the most common move here is black just taking back, but then thanks for the bishop. This is a blind spot that so many players miss, the bishop falling on g4. And at this point, guys, even if black sees that, the only move they have here, which gives them about an even game, is knight f6. Even then, we take on c6. This is a very dangerous position to play with as black. You've got to play very accurate chess. But of course, if black takes with the knight, and then they play knight d7 here, okay, you don't want to play king e7. That is just ugly. And queen d7 drops the rook. So here you got to defend with the knight. We can play knight c3. Okay, that's the move that I like personally, just developing. And hey, if rook c8, queen g2, again, attacking the bishop and taking advantage of that file that black just can't fight for. And we're up a pawn. Pretty cool, right? We're playing a gambit, and it gave us that one pawn advantage. Okay, so returning to c4. If you see the move of c6 there, queen b3 is the move. And queen b3 tends to be the option against a lot of different stuff, as we're about to see. However, if e6, this is a memorization moment, you want to play queen a4 with check because you get that opportunity to check and also eye up that bishop. And by the way, if you check and they offer a queen trade, you could just trade queens and then get your pawn back. You're completely fine there in that spot. Now, what's the third most popular move in online chess? Bishop e6. This is just a bad move. Queen b3. You took a pawn. You brought your bishop back to a very awkward square. Now, what should black do here? Right? I want to keep covering what black should do according to the engine. Well, bishop c8. How many players are going to do that? Hardly any at all. And even if black does do that, we're simply better because we can take off the pawn on d5. We take it right off. If g6 or something, knight c3. Guys, we have 3 defenders on d5 right now. Potentially a 4th on the way that is a pawn. And, I mean, if I'm looking at this from the black side, this is just uncomfortable, to say the least. But what do we see the most often? b6. Against that, we take on d5. And black will often play bishop d7. You could play d6, but that's not a great idea. What you should do instead is play knight f3. It's very hard for black to develop here. This knight on b8 is having a hard time. It can't naturally develop to c6 or d7. And if knight f6, knight e5, taking control. Most players play e6 here. I'm trying to highlight here just how unprepared players are at the large level against the Grob. If e6, we could take on d7 and then take on e6. We're attacking the knight and the pawn, and we're going after the hanging rook. This is resignable for black. Going back to c4. Next up in line, we have knight f6. If we see that move again, queen b3. We're playing queen b3 against nearly anything except e6, right? Except e6 there. And by the way, I mean, in that spot, right, with knight f6, if you decide to throw in a check, right, the reason it's not good here is because the bishop can fly back and defend, right? The bishop flies back. On top of that, the bishop was already defended But that doesn't make a ton of sense there. Okay, so be careful about that type of idea. Again, against e6, you throw in a check. Against nearly anything else, you're playing queen b3. Here, queen b3. And, yeah, I mean, there's a number of things that black can try here. The engine has black going with something here like pawn to c6 or playing pawn to e6, right? And if you do see that type of move, you can take on d5 and you could play knight c3. You could have captured on b7 as well. This is just what I like, adding pressure up against that pawn. And here again, the engine move is knight c6. Just going, yeah, there's a lot of attackers against d5. There's a lot of pressure against b7. I don't care. I'm just going to let you take one of them. And, okay, we can end up taking back with our queen. If black here wants to fight for a win, they got to play the move of queen to f6. Again, guys, what are the chances your opponent sees this and they play these types of moves? I mean, close to 0. Against queen b3, what do we usually see? We don't usually see c6 or e6. We usually see bishop to c8. Black trying to give that pawn some defense while continuing to defend the pawn with their queen. That makes sense, but then we take. If c6, knight c3. You want to take? Fine. We'll take all day long. And at this point, black takes on d5 all the time. Again, a bad move because of bishop takes d5. And we're now threatening to take on f7. We're also threatening to take on b7, and you just can't stop both if you're black, unless you take our bishop, which is obviously a bad idea. And here, if the bishop takes, we take back with our queen. We're up material with knight d7. I think b3 is kind of a nice option, a nice idea. Looking to fianchetto that bishop on the long diagonal, get this rook to g1 at some point as well. And we're in business. We're in a great spot. And finally, with c4, the 5th most common move in online chess is black taking. Now, this is important to cover because we should take on b7. We should. And, I mean, nearly every time we see this, black plays knight d7, which makes sense. They want to protect the rook with the queen, but they don't want to give up a full piece. They don't want to play knight a6 or knight c6. You know, that doesn't make a lot of sense. They don't want to just give up the rook. So we see knight d7 all the time. And you could take the rook. That's playable. You could do that. What I would say is that black is able to take back with the queen. We are up material, but this is uncomfortable, to say the least. I mean, f3 there, you know, I mean, that's the best thing we got. Black doesn't have to move their bishop. We're not threatening to take that bishop because our rook would fall. We're basically just saving our rook by playing f3. If we do see e5, I mean, striking in the center is a good idea. We could take back with the queen. We could take on c4. Hey, we're up material here, guys. We're up the exchange. But, I mean, talk about being down in development. This is, I don't think for most players this is a lot of fun. So, you know, this is not a great option. And by the way, knight f3 is even worse because of knight e5. We can't even take the knight because queen takes rook and the game is over on the spot. We could throw in a check. We could play knight c3. We could take back. And if queen takes f3, we could castle. I'm playing very good chess for white. But, I mean, this is terrible. This is horrible. I mean, if black wanted to, they could just get a draw by threefold repetition. They could do that. Of course, they should play queen h3 and threaten a mate in 2. But this is not great, to say the least. So, all that said, right, if you do see the move of bishop takes b7 and then knight d7 played, we don't want to take that rook. I don't recommend that. Okay, what I recommend here is knight a3, which performs very well. If you're looking at the stats in terms of how white does great in this type of position because we have this very active bishop. If we do see rook b8 at this point, we bring our bishop back. And the whole point of knight a3 is to target that doubled isolated pawn. And queen a4 is an idea that we could throw in as well, right? I mean, look, if black wants to defend the pawn on c4 with the bishop, queen a4, adding pressure against the knight and both of these pawns. If g6, knight f3. If bishop g7, hey, let's go pester that bishop. Why not? 1, 2, and 3. Black here is very uncomfortable. And if rook b4 defending the pawn, okay, queen c2. Quiet little option. Quietly putting pressure up against it. And again, if we see something like bishop to e6, there's multiple options available. Knight f3 is a good option. I mean, you're looking at g5, you're looking at e5. You could have even went with the move of knight to b5 there. That's also a good choice. Really just putting pressure on the black camp in a way that most players aren't going to be prepared for. But the most common move that we see is rook to b6. And against that move, queen a4. Add more pressure. Right? Add more pressure. Right? Why not? I mean, we're looking towards knight takes c4, putting pressure against that rook. And with rook b8, if we see the rook run back, okay, we just take. I mean, black here's wasting a lot of time. If knight f6, knight e5. Knight e5. We're now double attacking the bishop on g4. We're threatening to win that piece. And the engine move that black has at this point is actually just moving the rook. I mean, if you move the bishop here, right, if you run with the bishop somewhere, we continue developing. d3 is something that we could look at on the way. And we just have a ton of pressure against that knight, with another knight coming potentially on the way at some point, depending on how this type of line goes. And as always, we have that rook g1 type of mobility available. And returning to knight e5 again with rook b6. Okay, d3. Naturally developed, guys. Right? If black wants to take your bishop and get rid of some tension, fine. We'll take back with the queen. And if something like bishop to e6, I mean, we don't want to just quietly play a3 because bishop d5 is played, our queen's attacked, our rook is hanging. We're losing at this point. However, what do? I mean, you could play e4 to stop that threat. You could also just develop the knight. That's fine too, because bishop d5, now you move your queen, you're completely fine. You're up material. You have good development of e6 or something, e4 striking in the center. And I mean, we're in a great spot. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video on the Grob opening. I mean, very interesting option. Very underrated option in my opinion. Let me know what you thought of it down below. And a quick reminder that for the rest of this month, the rest of September, I'm giving out a 30% off discount code for all of my online courses. This includes the Mastering Chess Endgames course, which I just released, which is over 28 hours in length. We got the Modern Scandi, the Hippo, the Czech Pirc, the Ponziani, Knight C3 against the Scandi. A lot of different options there. If you're interested in getting 30% off on any or all of those courses, go down to the description below or the pinned comment, plug in the discount code CHESS25, and if you do so, you will receive 30% off on your purchase, no matter how many courses you decide to invest in. Thank you for those of you that have invested in a course or in multiple courses, and thank you for those of you that have watched this video. I know the Grob opening is a hard sell, but I'm excited to make more content on it if it's something that y'all would want to see. I wanted to finish this video out by giving a big thanks to Walter, Steve, Rob, that's a lot of Robs, Ray, Roger, and the rest of my Patreon community. I appreciate you guys a ton. If you guys haven't checked out the Patreon before, there are some exclusive benefits that you gain by becoming a member, and I look forward to seeing y'all in the next video. Peace.